we are now going to be giving some initial reactions here to the deal that the Dallas Cowboys have just agreed to with wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, which is going to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history as he signs a 4-year extension worth $136 million per Ian Rappaport. This deal just came out no more than 10 minutes ago. CeeDee Lamb gets $100 million guaranteed and a wide receiver record $38 million signing bonus in getting this deal done. Again, all details there credited to Ian Rappaport, who just broke this story. So this obviously is a massive deal for a number of different reasons. We will start by analyzing this from the perspective of the Dallas Cowboys. They have been in the sort of bad graces, I would phrase it as, with the national media basically the entire offseason, considering the fact that they really didn't go out and spend all that much money. They saw a number of key players from the key players and within the coaching staff walk away during free agency, and people were sort of looking at the Cowboys like, okay, you've been very successful over the course of these past few years, but you're not doing anything. You're losing all of these pieces, and on top of all of that, there are 3 cornerstone players in quarterback Dak Prescott, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, and edge rusher linebacker Micah Parsons were all eligible for a contract extension, and for the longest time the Cowboys were unable to get any of those deals done, which struck a lot of red flags for a lot of people. But now they at least check one of those off the list by getting CeeDee Lamb under contract, which is at least a step in the right direction. Now, if you've been listening to our show here, I have made the arguments in the past that CeeDee Lamb is a very, very talented wide receiver, and truthfully, I mean, locking him up is at least a start, because even if he isn't here long term and he doesn't make it through the entire contract, CeeDee Lamb, yes, now a very, very expensive contract, but not a player where I see the value there diminishing within a couple years to the point where the Cowboys can't get anything out of it. So you just sort of save yourself the drama by getting this deal with CeeDee Lamb done. But that being said, out of those big 3 that I just referenced, him, Dak Prescott, and Micah Parsons, you are coughing up a lot of money to probably, at least in my opinion, the least impactful player out of that group. Now, I know people have their issues with Dak Prescott, and I fully understand the concerns there. The fact that we don't have a very extensive playoff record, that we've seen regular season games go their way, but ultimately nobody cares about that, especially when you play for the Dallas Cowboys. So I understand Dak 100% needs to be better in the playoffs, but he was second in MVP voting last year. Now, a weaker MVP voting class, I suppose, sure, but Dak, in my opinion, is a top 10 wide receiver and is sort of the identity of this offense right now. Even before CeeDee fully emerged, I mean, Dak was holding it down as much as he possibly could throughout his tenure here in Dallas. Now, obviously, a different identity of that offense now in comparison to what it looked like when Dak Prescott was first drafted in 2016, I believe it was. Back then, it was Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield with one of the best offensive lines maybe in the entire 2010s on that Dallas Cowboys front line, where they were able to ground and pound. You had some very notable wide receivers as well, but it was more so about the run game with Dallas and sort of easing Dak into it, in comparison to last year, where it was basically all through the air game. Didn't really have much of a running back room. Tony Pollard did not live up to who they were expecting to be as a lead back, and it was really on the shoulders of Dak, now granted with CeeDee as well, and that's why they were one of the best passing offenses in the league. So again, when you're looking at CeeDee Lamb, he deserves a lot of credit for it as well. But that being said, Dak is the one who is now dealing with a pretty poor offensive line overall here. Now, we'll see. Maybe some of these young players can develop for them. Tyler Guyton, I'm a little bit iffy on, at least in terms of his year one production. You're relying on a lot of youth. And, you're set at those two guard positions, but outside of that, it's a lot of unknowns on the offensive line. So it's going to be necessary to capitalize on the pass game. And now CeeDee is going to probably have a little bit of higher expectations. And he's had high expectations since he was drafted in the first round. He's going on 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. He's only continued to get better year after year. So I think he's going to be able to hold his own to that. But outside of the Cowboys as well. Again, this is kind of a deal they had to get done. I'm still very curious as to what they do with the Dak Prescott contract situation now, more so than the Micah Parsons situation. Parsons, I think, still has 2 fully guaranteed years left on his deal, so he had even publicly said that he wanted them to prioritize getting CeeDee and Dak done before understanding just sort of the natural pecking order there based off of urgency. But now, definitely going to be a question as to what sort of shakes out in Dallas in terms of making additional moves. This obviously also coming on the heels as well of Jerry Jones saying that it's not exactly a priority, which seemed to ruffle some feathers a little bit. But ultimately, they get the deal done regardless and make him, again, the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Now, that being said, that does have additional ramifications across the league. Because CeeDee Lamb, coming off of an All-Pro first-team season, he was All-Pro second-team in 2022. So, already very much established as one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. I don't think that anybody would really dispute that. But this has been a very noisy offseason in terms of sort of the situations with how teams are going about these contracts for wide receivers. The Brandon Ayuk dispute has been very much an ongoing conversation through the entirety of the offseason, and he is going to be trying to get a new contract. And Jamar Chase, who did just return to practicing, I believe, within these past couple days, which is a big positive for Bengals fans, but that's somebody who has made an All-Pro second team before, who I think can very easily, as long as he and Joe Burrow are both fully healthy, he can be in that first or second team conversation as his years continue to progress. Injuries to himself in 2022 and injuries to Burrow in 2023 sort of threw off that cohesiveness of the offense. The numbers, Jamar still hasn't had less than 1,000 yards in a season, hasn't had less than 7 touchdowns in a season. So, he is very much in that conversation, and the Bengals know that they're going to have to pay him at this point. There's no getting around it, especially when Jamar Chase is going to see what CeeDee Lamb just got. It's almost certain that as long as he is able to have another healthy season, he's going to get paid big time as well, which does sort of lead further for the Bengals. Not that we want to get too far on that tangent right now, but they're already paying Joe Burrow. They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase, probably top, at least match this Dak Prescott, or this CeeDee Lamb, I should say, contract, but probably up it as well if they don't get it done until, next season. And that's so much money to have tied up into 2 players. They already have their other wide receiver, and T. Higgins has made some ruffles a little bit over the course of the offseason when he and the Bengals couldn't agree to a long-term deal after the franchise tag. So I think it almost certainly puts to rest the idea that T. Higgins is going to be with this Bengals team any longer than just this upcoming season, but it's definitely going to have its share of shockwaves moving forward here. And you think about, a very good portion of these young wide receivers already just got paid, whether you're talking about A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith on that same roster, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson. This has been a very high spending offseason in terms of the top wide receivers in the league and some of these younger names. But that's when you start to think about, well, what is a Jalen Waddle potentially going to get? And you sort of look to that next slate of wide receivers. Again, Jamar Chase, still unfinished business there. Brandon Ayuk, unfinished business there. But we're going to start to see, in this next year or so, who could be the next wide receiver to top that. I think Ayuk and Chase are probably the top of the conversation there, but it is only going to continue to go up, of course, in years to come. And the 2022 class becomes very interesting, at least to me, considering the fact that, we've been talking about the Falcons, Drake London, their first round pick of 2022. He's going to be up soon. Definitely not looking at that type of money, but he's going to have expectations for himself to get paid. Falcons have a lot of evaluation there. Garrett Wilson was also part of that 2022 class. He's been nothing but reliable and exceptional for a Jets offense that has been massively underwhelming over the course of the past couple seasons. So I think that he could probably, I know it's a lot, obviously, to ask, becoming the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. That, yes, Garrett Wilson has nice numbers. You'd probably like to see a little bit more there in terms of, reaching the top of the top. But I'm just saying, this is where we start to have the conversations, because it is exponential how much, especially at this point with the importance of the passing game, that how much these wide receivers are getting paid, and sort of how teams are going to be able to balance that, evaluate that conversation becomes very interesting. And it was CeeDee Lamb who sort of comes in here and resets the market. So again, just initial reactions here. This news broke about 20 minutes or so ago now at this point. So still have a lot of things to work out here, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section, because this is definitely league breaking here. But we are now going to actually be switching gears to college football before we come back around to the NFL. But the original segment 1 plan was to talk about what was in a short but an excellent weekend in college football. Week 0 kicking off. We already see a top 10 team in the country go down. We saw multiple extensive comebacks in this weekend. So we're going to be diving into all of that, talking about what the chances are that Florida State, who obviously is the team that did go down out of the top 10, and what that means for their playoff hopes. A whole lot to dive into there. But first, a quick break. Do not go anywhere, as we are coming to you with this action-packed episode. But first, a quick break. We'll be right back.